In today's episode of Well, we're going to be talking with Josh Biro. Josh is the founder of the Yogapreneur Collective and head coach at Nomad Business Coaching. So he's been consulting with primarily yoga studios, but lots of businesses within the boutique fitness landscape over the past 10 years. And not only has he been doing coaching, but he's actually physically driven around the country to visit hundreds of studios. Josh thrives on the satisfaction of knowing that he's helped these really do-good entrepreneurs have more time for themselves, more money to affect change, and more freedom to live the lives that they want to live. And he's one of the people in the industry that I've always looked to for wisdom, for guidance, for answers, because he's so excited about the data behind the scenes. He is relentlessly studying what's happening in the industry and how data can impact studios. So as this industry has evolved, what we're seeing is that the need for support has really taken off. And as a result, we've seen a massive increase in the number of consulting firms, marketing agencies, all kinds of online communities really built to help the wellness entrepreneur. And that is why we have our guest today, Josh Biro. We are so stoked to have you here today. Welcome to the show, Josh.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited. This is a good one. I'm ready for this conversation.
I had a feeling you would be. So, little backstory. Josh and I have worked together on and off for years. We've known each other for a long time, speaking on stages, oftentimes around the same topic. We're both really, really passionate about kind of bringing professionalism, sales, and just business acumen into the yoga world. Both of us are yogis and have spent a lot of time working with yoga studio owners. Well, first of all, Josh, where are you coming to us from today? Where are you located physically?
Yeah, I live in Sayulita, Mexico.
All right. A valid question, right? Josh is literally all over the world. And your business used to be called Nomad Business Consulting, right?
Yeah, that's right. We did the van life thing before it was cool. People were like, "You live in a what? What's your
A
problem?"
van down by the river.
Yeah, we were absolutely the van down by the river.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, I know Sayulita is stunning and kind of a little yoga mecca, so I'm sure you guys have found a good spot. Let's actually jump into that, your background. So how did you land into consulting for yoga studios? What brought you into this little niche of our industry?
Yeah, I would say like the super quick version is I grew up in a bit of a yoga family. And I always make the point, like, I hated it. I hated practicing. I started when I was like 13. I hated practicing. I was embarrassed. It was only my dad, who was the other dude in the class only. He always wore like what I thought were inappropriately small spandex shorts. And like by the end of the class, I would have like 6 bolsters, 4 blocks of strap would be like hanging. And the teacher would inevitably be like, "How does that feel?" And I'd be like, "I don't know, ridiculous. I don't know." So
Yeah.
I was the reluctant yogi at
Okay.
first. But then after aging out of hockey, I was broken. So I kind of had a rediscovery, and especially in
Yeah.
the hot yoga world at the time. Fast forward a few more years, became a yoga teacher with my wife, and managed a studio, built a couple studios, had our own studio, which we then finally ended up selling after almost a decade, and did the van life thing. During which time I think we stopped counting studios at that, 125, something like that.
Oh my God.
And so that whole process together had 3 components to it. The first being the realization that a studio isn't just a business, and that the community that forms around the practice of yoga or any boutique fitness or wellness is a really special thing. Like the studio is this third space
Yeah.
that we've culturally lost. And so our moment of that was we lost a daughter 4 days before her second birthday. And we had this one spiritual practice, 2, we're healthy enough, like physically, energetically, which sounds weird, but like really matters at that moment in time.
Right.
And then
Right.
also had a community around us. And so like I don't know how we would have made it through that without that.
Yeah.
So that was one major thing. Then we also like our studios, I don't know, we made money, we had cars, we bought a house. It was the only thing we did. And then we sold it profitably. So I just kind of thought like that's how it goes if you run a good studio. And then traveling, immediately we realized that was not a normal scenario. And a lot of studios were struggling, or even like paying the bills, but just jaded and burnt out when we weren't having
Right.
fun anymore. So
Right.
we'd end up just having dinner, having coffee, and talking shop. And that's what got me started on the consulting coaching part of it. And it's kind of expanded from there.
Awesome. So the Yogapreneur Collective today, what does it look like? I mean, I'm a
Yeah.
yoga studio and I'm kind of like, okay, I've heard of this thing. What happens if I join the Yogapreneur Collective?
Yeah, we've formulated around two primary components. One is coaching, and we use the word coaching instead of consulting, the differentiator being a consultant looks at what's going on, makes recommendations, tells you what to do, sends you on your way. And a coach is someone who's coaching you as well as the business. We actually have two avatars that we're serving. One is the business, but the other is the entrepreneur.
Yeah, I like
And
that.
so, right. So, because let's be real, like the whole idea of separate business and personal is bullshit. You can't do that, actually. Like, you kind of have to draw a line between it, of course, but to say one doesn't impact the other is not true.
Right.
So coaching is core component number one. And then component number two is the actual community itself. And it's just, there's this weird thing that happens that I feel like as much as it's said, people don't anticipate and then experience, which is being isolated at the top. As soon as you own the business, your peers aren't your peers anymore. Like that friend of yours who was going to ride or die with you as a yoga teacher suddenly is grumpy because you couldn't give them a raise or whatever. So you don't, and also when's the last time as a business owner, someone who owns whatever, a bar, studio, Pilates, yoga, you name it, walks down the street to their competitors like, what are you guys doing that's working?
Yeah,
Like that's just
never.
not the attitude. Never. The community part is like the peer-to-peer interaction, communication, and that I think is a special component of what we do as well because it's important for people to have that outlet.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I think I've been a part of starting and a part of, taking part in different communities throughout my professional journey. And when you really find those groups of people that you can get vulnerable with, and I mean, how many times do you pop into communities and or Facebook groups and it's like everything's cheery and rosy and it's like, bullshit, guys. Like, I was
Right.
here till 10 o'clock last night and I'm exhausted. And now a teacher didn't show up or whatever. Like, the ability to be vulnerable and say, like, I actually don't have it all figured out is so, so profound. And from what I hear from your clients and just talking to you, it sounds like you guys have really nailed that in the YC.
Well, thank you for saying. That's very nice to hear.
Okay.
I would also add to that at the risk of sounding a little bit like a butthead. A lot of groups you go into are just really whiny. And the reason that happened, I mean, there's multiple components to this, but like part of that is that most of the participants in the group are taking instead of giving. You go into the group and they're just at like, what about this? What about this? All the time taking, 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 poor me, poor this, as opposed to looking at it like a community where I want to add value to everyone else and share my experience, not my opinion, my experience, because it's a different thing. Because the rising tide rises all ships. So what we found is after someone's been coaching for a while and they're in our community, that tends to be more the case is this buy-in on realizing that like we want the whole industry to do better. And when I look at your business, you're just me 3 years ago kind of thing.
Yeah.
And someone helped me at that moment too. So like, I don't know, that's what makes the value kind of
Yeah.
go up. Yeah.
That's a great call out as far as differentiation. That actually is a perfect kind of segue into where I want to guide this chat because the consulting landscape, as I mentioned, has kind of exploded. And there's everything from marketing agencies that plug in for a second and then unplug or, online communities like you're talking about. How have you seen it evolve and is it moving in a positive direction generally, this consulting landscape?
Yeah. I I think it's generally moving in a positive direction. The asterisk on that is just that there's no criteria. Just like there's not actually, like if we're being honest here, there's no real criteria for you to call yourself a yoga teacher. So there's no real criteria to call yourself a consultant or a coach. So all that means is because like there are certifications that exist, we're even building a certification program for this exact reason. But it just means that you have to be a little bit discerning as a consumer of any of these firms or social media marketing or whatever else, or like who can actually help you and who is actually equipped to do that. I've experienced this firsthand more than once actually, where I've hired a coach, a consultant, or been in a program and been dissatisfied with the information and the coaching that I received. And after the fact, realized it's because the person didn't actually have the information I needed. So that's on me for not discerning that ahead of time. But in the extreme example, way back, I hired a yoga business coach actually in one of the first studios I was managing. And unfortunately, this person, although they had run 3 different yoga studios, so knew how to speak the yoga studio language, what the information that they held back was that all those studios failed and they sold them for
Oof.
nothing. Like they didn't actually prove that they knew how to do it the business. So
Yeah.
it was like you're learning from someone who proven it themselves, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think oftentimes when, correct me if I'm wrong, but oftentimes when people are looking for support and help, they're probably at a point where they're either desperate, like the business is really about to fail, or they've just reached their ceiling of what they have the capacity to do themselves. And I think sometimes it's really hard to step into a discerning mind at that
Yeah.
stage and ask the right questions. So, what do you hope people will ask? Like when you're going out or when someone's going out and saying, okay, I am at that place. I need some support. I need some help. In a dream world, what kind of questions are they asking and what do they do to make the right choice?
Yeah. It's a tricky question to answer because if the coaching firm, the consultant, the agency that you're looking for is worth their salt, they won't let you ask the questions.
Interesting.
They're going to ask you the right questions, and that's the better indicator.
Okay. So they're interviewing you more than you're interviewing them.
Kind of. And we would view that as a negative thing because we think there's some control dynamic here. But
Mhm.
here would be the example, right? If someone is looking at a consulting agency and you're a yoga boutique fitness owner, many of the owners believe that their biggest problem is a lack of leads. They say
Mhm.
the biggest problem is I just need more people through the doors. Any agency that's worth anything is going to then immediately say like, okay, that's interesting that you think that. Why? And then also, what do your KPIs say? And I can tell you from our firsthand experience, 95% of the time, studios do not need more leads. In fact, if you got more leads, it would be a bigger problem for you. You need
Wow.
sales and conversions. And if you look at the industry standards on a yoga studio, for example, it's like half the people that come in don't buy the intro and don't come back unless you build a better system around it. Right now, we're seeing that's actually skewing even lower. So
Wow.
more leads isn't going to solve the problem. It's just going to spend a bunch of money. The point would be if you're finding the right person or place to help you, they're going to be more about trying to understand you and understand the actual problem, not just symptoms that you're experiencing, and help you get that clarity. That's who can really help you because it means that they're even working on the right thing.
Yeah. I mean, case in point, I hosted a webinar last week and we did a little poll during the webinar of like, what's keeping you up at night right now or biggest challenge in your business today. And I think it was like 85% of people said leads. And I know most
Yeah.
of those businesses are, maybe not even tracking any other KPIs than how many people are coming through the door or maybe how many memberships they sell. But it's definitely an easy bucket to put your problems into.
Well, the argument that's for the focus on leads is that if you have enough volume of leads coming in, at some point, like other problems don't seem like problems anymore.
Right, right.
It's just, and I would say the larger industry right now, we're at an interesting moment where lead generation is hard. And not because we have a lack of ability or access to getting your business or name in front of people, but because we have a much more discerning consumer base than ever before. So, like, there's no such thing as just like never tried a Pilates class. I guess I'll just walk in. Like, that's not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
So there is
Well,
an
let's
argument for wanting to solve for leads. I would just say you've got to think through that whole process. Someone walks in, like, can you keep them and are they going to become a habitual practitioner with you or not? Because until you've got that solved, you're going to feel like lead gen and marketing is a waste anyways.
Okay, let's go deeper into that because I have more questions about consultants, but we're always trying to figure out this wellness consumer. And I think so many of us have bucketed into a very specific avatar over the last, 10, 15 years of boutique fitness. And I would be really interested to hear your thoughts on how the traditional boutique fitness consumer is changing and what about them is so challenging to capture right now.
Yeah. Well, I think the challenge is noise more than anything else. You or I just walking down the street in San Diego are going to get hit by the estimates are like 6 to 8 thousand advertisements a day.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
it's just there's a lot of noise, and the human brain is exceedingly good at just shutting out noise. It doesn't matter. So if you're just in that red ocean of noise, like no one even pays attention to you.
Right.
So that's like one component. But the other thing is there are some larger experiences that boutique fitness has had that have created a situation, and there's more to this in the larger culture maybe too, where you have this more discerning viewpoint where you just saying like, hey, we do yoga classes. That doesn't mean anything anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas in 2005, if you opened a studio in the right market, you're like, we do good yoga. That was it. That was your marketing strategy. And people came in. So you have to say something that actually has impact and is compelling for someone and that they actually believe can improve their life in some way or help them solve a problem, etc. And that can be hard because using yoga studios as the specific example, what does every yoga studio on the planet have on their website? Yoga for everybody.
For everyone. I
Right.
was just going to say everybody, everyone, something like that.
Worst marketing phrase ever.
Which I understand. Like theoretically,
Yeah.
yes, I know you are welcoming to everyone, but 100% agree.
Yeah. So if yoga for everybody, like then it's not for me. And I don't want yoga for everybody. I want yoga for me, Josh, 40 some odd age dude who's got a sore back and 3 kids chasing around. That's the yoga.
Yeah,
So yeah.
totally. Okay, awesome. Well, so as people are looking through the landscape of, support out there in the world right now, is there anything that you would say, like, what do you look out for as this guy's selling snake oil? This woman is actually not going to produce what they're saying. Are there any telltale signs or anything that you've seen consistently that you're like, okay, this is a red flag?
Yeah. I mean, the number one thing is a complete lack of experience or proof. You can have
Mm,
minimal experience, but be able to prove that what you do works. So it's one or the other. Basically, like, can you prove it? But then number two is, how are you going to help me get the result is the question. If you're formulating a product, you can have the, hey, do this product yourself. We do it with you. I do it for you.
mhm.
What very often happens though is that's not clear in the conversation with consultants and coaches. Like what things are you doing for me versus are we doing together versus am I doing by myself? And the reason that matters is that you have a differential in expectation. This is important if you're a coach. Like for all our coaches, we talk about this too. We'll be very clear about what it is that we do. This is exactly what we offer. This is what you're going to have to do in participation. That's how this relationship will be powerful. And if we both meet these expectations, like we're going to crush it. That's what happens. I can tell
Okay.
you stuff all day. You don't do the work. I'm not going to get results. Or if you're expecting I'm going to do this for you and then I don't or I can't, well, then we're also not going to get results. So I think the thing to look out for is this super promise of like overnight, we're going to fix all this stuff and we're going to get this going and this going and this. But then what you actually experience is cool. Now watch this video course and then go do this homework.
Right, right. Yeah, and these are people who are already overwhelmed, right? They have no additional time in their day, and this is meant to be, maybe a lifeline. So you can't create more time. I think that the best question you can ask, like you said, number one, tell me about your success stories with businesses that look exactly like mine. If you're a single location yoga studio, great, but they need to have success with a single location yoga studio, not just somebody who's done marketing work for giant franchises. So it's a
Right.
different world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's actually a really good point. We experience this very often, especially in the marketing agency side of things, where I've even hired a few myself, where you have a marketing agency who's making really big promises. They clearly have experience, but their experience is in such a different industry and they just
Mm,
assume that it translates across. And anyone who's in any of these more niche things, again, Pilates, bar, yoga, CrossFit, even you might say, like, there are just some little quirks and nuances. Is this shit that goes down in a yoga studio on a daily basis that you explain in another business and people are like, what? Like,
yeah.
how is that possible? And it's just a normal thing. They just don't understand the nuance of that. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think niche is important. And we are in a very, like, boutique fitness is its own niche within the wellness and fitness world. But even within boutique fitness, the narrow niche can be just as critical when we're looking at support, consulting, marketing. So, kind of on that thread of setting expectations and being clear about what the studio is getting, what the consultant's offering, are there certain things you've seen studio owners or businesses do that are like, yes, we know this one's going to be successful because X, Y, or Z? Is it organization? Is it they have a specific person in a specific role? What are those details that really lead to success?
Yeah, man.
Big
There's so
question.
many things.
Big
There's so
question.
many things you could say, but ultimately, it comes down to two things in my mind. One is this is the yogi in me. One is awareness.
Okay.
Like the precursor to anything that you're going to do in your business is being aware of what the actual problem is and being aware of yourself. How am I impacting this? The extension of that thought is that the one condition that we see automatically make someone succeed is someone who is 100% bought in and is taking full radical ownership of their business. There's no victimhood. There's none of this like, oh, the competitor down the street opened up and they took this teacher left, so blah, blah, like none of that. They're just like, what do we need to do next? This isn't working. Let's do this thing. And then they go and do it.
Awesome.
Even
Yeah.
a,
Awareness. Go ahead. Sorry.
oh, I was just going to say, even a shit plan, but fully implemented will get you some results and you'll learn something. You know, like what you
Yeah.
do is less important up front than doing something. And that comes from that like radical responsibility for your business.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the awareness piece is in dealing with it from the software lens. We often hear blaming things on software or blaming even people who are coming to us who are looking for a solution. Oftentimes it's red flags when somebody will come in like, oh, this software is making my business fail. And it's like, is it really? Or like, we're happy to have you. Listen, I will gladly show you examples of how Walla can help restore faith in technology. But yeah, it's always a little bit of okay, this is going to be a tough one if the software is the reason your business is failing in your eyes.
Right, right. It has nothing to do with being closed on this day or not having whatever it is. It's hard. This is the hardest part about it. Like I think being an entrepreneur, and that word is pretty pop culture, but like there's a difference between just being a small business owner and having this entrepreneurial spirit. I would define it as your small business owners love what they do, and that's the end of the story. And the entrepreneurial spirit comes in when you learn to love what it takes. Like the
Mm.
game of the business itself is now inspiring for me, and I'm bought in on that level. And by extension, the sort of, I think, a little unpopular opinion that I have is, man, being an entrepreneur is absolutely part of your spiritual practice. Like it is, it's so challenging on a personal level, and you're gonna have to get punched in the face a little bit here and there. It's
Yeah,
not that
it's
it
like
has to be
parenthood.
negative. Yeah, it's like parenthood.
Yeah.
It's like the best thing ever and the worst thing ever at the same time.
Exactly. When you try to, I mean, I genuinely think about the early days of my business as like the newborn phase with my kids. Like, I know there were a lot of sleepless nights. I know there were a lot of times where I was woken up by like a panicked nervous system. I've really started to forget them because that's
Right.
survival. And that's what makes me want to keep going and want to keep doing it time and time again. Yeah, I actually love you. You need to write a book, Josh. That is like the greatest definition of entrepreneur. Maybe somebody's already wrote it, but I will credit you, hopefully. That is the best definition of entrepreneurship versus small business ownership I've heard. I like it.
But I do like
Okay, so if I'd love to go into just some advice. I mean, I've got a captive audience right now of studio owners, fitness professionals. What are some things that really can move the needle for businesses today? We have this amazing brain of you who works with studios all day, every day, and helps make them successful. If you had to give a couple pieces of advice, where would you start?
Yeah, I think on the personal side, it's this awareness equation. It's like this radical ownership, this get a little gritty about it. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean don't be nice, don't be empathetic, whatever, but the realization is that your business is not you. And
Mm,
that disconnection is positive in a few different ways. One of which means if the business is not you, just like your kid is not you, but you're still responsible for it. I can't make my kid do anything, but I'm responsible for them. And I want to offer them the best equation for them to succeed and grow. That's exactly what you're doing with your business. And so the reason I say it like that is that if you don't reconcile that you are responsible for the business and that it won't just do its thing by itself, then you're stuck in the mud of like
mhm,
just whatever happens to happen happens and that's it. And then when that goes sideways, you've got no power. And by
mhm.
extension, no one else is coming to save you.
Right.
You can get help and you should ask for help when you need it, but like in the end, you're responsible for your business, so you got to do something about it. So
Yeah.
I think on the personal side, like that can be a big step at first. But as soon as you're there, the rest of it, you'll figure it out once that buy-in is there.
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like that for a lot of people, myself included. I mean, it takes some therapizing. I might have just made that word up, but therapizing to get to that point
We know what
because
you're saying.
yeah, it's so personal sometimes because you pour
Yeah.
so much of your blood, sweat, and tears into it. It's hard not to feel personal about it, but I get what you're saying, and so true because I love yeah, we can just keep using parenthood metaphors because it really does feel applicable. It's like your kids. You can't force them into being anything other than what they are, but you can be responsible for them and take ownership of the outcomes. Yeah.
So then maybe the next thing from that place, like that's on the more personal side that I see,
Mhm.
is then you need to know what's happening in your business. Like whatever you don't understand or don't know what's going on in your business, that's the thing that you can get taken advantage of around. That's the thing that
Mhm.
can have a problem that curveballs you. And so it's pretty simple. Like you got to know your numbers, you got to know your KPIs, you got to know what's happening. And if you're not sure where to start, you might need to get some consultation on that. But the place to start is what's happening with your clients. Like if you think about any studio that would be using Walla, who's the end user? It's someone coming in and like, what's the path for them? Well, they got to come to the studio. They got to buy your intro or whatever your first offer is. They got to end up on your membership. So like what's happening with that?
Mhm.
Exactly. How many first visits do you have on average? What percentage exactly are you converting every month from this to this to this? So
Mhm.
just getting that knowledge. We talk about that you make what you measure. Like everyone's heard that. We've also heard the idea that whatever you focus on expands, but they're saying the same thing. So sometimes just by looking at your numbers and knowing them, almost organically, you start to take action in the right way. Getting a little philosophical here. This goes back to this awareness thing too, where I think the reason awareness is so powerful is that as soon as you're aware of something, you regain choice.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think naturally as humans, we are constantly wanting evolution, looking to better. It's natural to see something and to want to do anything to move it in the right direction. So awareness leads to naturally bettering whatever it is that sits in front
Right.
of you. Yeah.
Well, so from a business practical sense, as soon as you're aware, you look at your numbers, some conversion KPIs, first visits, first visit to second visit, who purchases your first offer, who ends up on your membership, which one of those is or isn't hitting industry benchmark. If one of them's obviously not, well, now you're aware, okay, that sucks. You might not like it, have a cry for a minute, and then do something about it. Like because if you don't at that point, now you're making the choice. Now you're saying like, now this is the victimhood again of like, well, this number's not good and I'm just going to not do anything about it. Oh, I better post a reel on Instagram or like complain about this teacher or work
Right.
on this workshop or something.
Well,
Pulling
I
that,
think that comes back right away to having something like the Yogapreneur Collective or a place where you immediately, if you're like, okay, I'm seeing this KPI suck, and shit, man, if I had the answer, I'd do it right away, but I don't. So how can I find someone who does and immediately learn from them? And having a home for that is just invaluable.
yeah. Well, and here's the answer. Like this is the first thing that we would coach to in any business that we work with too. Know your numbers on these conversion things, your primary conversion. We call it your effective conversion rate. It's the likelihood that someone walks in your business, do they end up on your MRR, on your monthly membership, and or do they hit your lifetime value mark? What percentage of those people do that? If that percentage is not high enough for you to be profitable or to be growing at the trajectory that you want, then something in there is broken. And that's where you do the work. That's not sexy because it's not saying like, let's do a bunch of marketing or advertising or let's add this new class type or let's whatever. It's getting just the base stuff in place first, which is things like simple stuff, your pricing, training your team to sell at the front desk, an
Mhm.
SOP for how you take someone through their first visit.
Yep.
That's it. All of that has to be
Yeah.
there first. So that's the first like really practical step, which I always feel funny saying it because I think people want us to say something way sexy.
Sexier and something, I mean, easier that you could just like check a
So
box and like, yep, posted that reel, done.
right.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So So as this, the industry is adding a lot right now. I feel like we're seeing yoga studios add wellness modalities, giant franchises of saunas, pop up in all different types. I mean, there are always fads in fitness, right? But it does feel like a new kind of expansion, I guess, right now. Is there anything that's really exciting you as you see this kind of landscape evolve?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think part of what is exciting to me is it's the IRL version of this. Like
Mm,
there's a movement back to real life stuff. There's been a post COVID, an understanding of the value of that, but now we're actually seeing brands that it's like, no, that's actually what we're leaning into. If we look at this from like a zoomed out, larger cultural landscape, in my opinion, it demonstrates what shows status now. Like if
mm,
you've got a Gucci bag, that doesn't show status. It might actually lower your status because you spent
yeah,
money on something silly. What shows status is that you have enough time to go and pamper yourself and actually be healthy.
yeah,
Health is a status, like it's always been a status symbol, but it's mega in that way. So that's, you can blend in the biohacking component of this, et cetera, et cetera. That's generally, I think, kind of exciting. And to your point, I think the other thing is this blended approach of things. I come out of
mhm,
a yoga, a couple of yoga lineages, Ashtanga and Bikram, where they both have the tendency of being like,
yeah.
this is the penicillin, just do this, nothing else exists, everything else is bullshit, just do it every day, whatever. And
Yeah.
there's some deeper value in that message, maybe. But the truth is, like, you need a holistic approach. It's not just eat healthy or just do yoga or just work out or just take care of your mental health. It's do all of those things. So the movement of blending some of this stuff together is
Yeah.
fascinating and exciting. One more thing, I know I'm adding a lot here, but by extension, the other thing is a lot of stuff that has been explained and described or understood by practitioners of a lot of boutique fitness and wellness is now being proven in science. So
Mm,
there's a we're like really backing up the idea around this stuff. It's not a new
yeah.
idea to go in a sauna. It's not a new idea to cold plunge. It's not a new idea to stretch, but now we can explain it in a hyper technical way, like why and what is happening and how should you do it. Like that stuff, those studies are happening. So that's really cool.
Yeah. No, I love that. One of my favorite things in the last year or two was watching the studies that Pvolve, the brand, did and actually coming to the table with data that proves that their modality or, whatever, it does have an impact on bone density and does have an impact on health and wellness. And so this is not something that's just like, oh, I feel so good after that class. It's like, yeah, of course you do. This is exactly what's happening in your body. Here's the
Hmm.
data that shows it. So it's a lot of fun to see all of that coming to the table. Well, I so appreciate the conversation, the time, and I want to make sure our listeners can find you, can make sure to chat with you, your coaches, and hopefully find your community. Where's the best place for them to start?
Yeah, I think you can find us on any of the standard social media channels. Studio Cult is actually the name for our social media stuff now. We're kind of leaning that
Oh, really?
direction. Yeah.
Studio Cult. Okay.
Yeah, we have a couple like little weekly show things that we're doing in our podcast and stuff like that. So that's a good starting place. And then if you run a boutique fitness, wellness, class-based business, we do have a private Facebook group that's free that you can join as well to start some conversation. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. And for those of you that are excited about learning, please head over and give them a follow. And we will see you next time on Well, Well, Well.